Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
I just want to start by saying go blue.
That long enough? That's long enough, right?
Yeah, that was good.
Dude, you can't just spring an umbrella laden foo drink on me without. I mean, the
excuse me,
was strong. I know.
I'm not so sure I care for the terminology you just used there for what I'm drinking. Hold on, let me crack this window. I'm dying in here.
Well, I know that it was presented the way it was presented perfect. So let's just get right into it. What are we drinking tonight over there?
I mean, I got working on a little manmosa tonight, a little bit of wine, a little bit of OJ in there, maybe some fresh fruit because I'm on a health kick now. What is that? Pop? Is that pop you got in that squeeze bottle there, or is that
agua?
H2O? Wow, running on unleaded? No, that's not even unleaded. That's
fish diesel. You coined it.
Oh yeah, fish diesel.
I'm making some changes, Breiler. It's got to be done. No, don't do that. Don't dismiss it this time. This is for real.
This time's for real.
By the way, I meant to text you this today, but I was driving when I got the yes, I can see the comments, Tony. Thank you for double checking on that. Facebook appears to be back and acting normal, so that's good. I meant to reach out to you today, but I was driving when I got confirmation, and then when I got home, I forgot. I have full unfettered access to a jugs machine that can do punts and technology that can track miles per hour.
Okay.
In one location.
Look at even your mom in the comment section saying she'll believe it when Brandon, listen, it's not we've got nothing but love for you here, but we need to see some changes, okay? The words mean nothing at this point. We got to see some substantial changes made. And then, once you're over the trifecta of McDonald's, KFC, and Taco Bell in the single day, well, then we might be on the same page.
I don't think that ever happened.
Well,
I wouldn't be here if all those happened in one day. 2 of the 3, I'll take that.
Listen, as somebody who has
I'm about to block
traveled with you, who has slept in the same hotel room with you, slept in a stranded RV with you.
Yeah.
Some changes need to be made. Your health is of concern to me, Brandon.
Oh man.
Chugging diesel, living on Pepsi. The body can only take so much.
Pepsi, Mountain Dew, bad food. Yeah, I mean that's my sleep habits. It's all bad.
I will say this: I have been, and probably there's a lot of people going through it. I feel like it happens this time of year. Like your body just wants to go into hibernation. You start eating a bunch of heavy comfort foods. The weather's getting cooler out. It just. Light foods right now aren't doing it for me. I'm not trying to eat salads. I'm trying to eat chili. I'm trying to eat hamburgers. We did go to, Frida Batitos today in Ann Arbor.
Favorite spot.
Yeah, multiple people had recommended it since we moved back here. My wife and I finally went and checked it out. Mwah, phenomenal food. Loved it.
Yeah, that's a great spot. Cuban infusion they kind of
but it's basically burgers, different takes on different style burgers, and it was phenomenal. It was really good.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and block that person. That should be working. Oh, it still says I don't have access to it. Maybe that's what screwed it up last time. God, I hope I didn't just screw it up again.
Well, the Facebook comments are coming in. I mean, they're rolling in. So,
But I'm saying they might stop as of like right now because that's the same time it happened last time. I think was when I tried to block one of those spam users, and then it said,
well, I mean, a good rule of thumb: if you're in here, if you're watching the show live, like we can always go in and do it afterwards. If it gets out, do you remember back in the day? It was like now it's like sports spam we were getting, but before it was like porn, like hardcore porn links showing up in the comments. Just don't click on those.
Yeah, I don't know what I see. It feels like the comments have stopped now, so I'm concerned about that. But anyway, all right. Let's throw this on here, and then we'll talk about the structure of today's show here in a moment. Thank you, Justin, for that kind donation. I need your guts on this. Not sure what that means exactly. All right, but big Dono stan, so big fan of Donovan Edwards since the 2021 Maryland game. Yeah, he blew up in that one as a true freshman. If he continues to struggle, does he still declare for the draft or come back to Michigan or transfer? This is something that we have talked about. I mean, I think it's fair to say that he is not going to be on any high pick draft boards with his current level of production. Talent-wise, ability, it's a different animal. Running back, you may be able to get, because of the way the running back position is kind of treated these days. I don't see a transfer happening because if he came back next year, he'd be the guy, like without question, and Michigan's still going to be pretty damn good. So I don't think that's the concern, but I do think he's going to have a decision to make because Chris, I'm pretty sure you've said this openly before because Dono's pretty much said it openly before.
Yeah.
He was planning on leaving after this year. Like that's been his plan. But now I don't know if that's such a sure bet at this point.
Well, I think he's still is the soundboard still on? I'm getting echo, I'm getting feedback. God damn it.
I'm gonna try to
Here's what I want to do. Everybody that's watching the live, Brandon and I are going to go out. We're going to restart the show, and then if we get one of those in here, just let it be because I can see that none of the Facebook comments are coming through at this point.
I can take. Hold on, before we do that, I think I can remove it and then add it back, and that's what I'm going to try to do right now. Give me a minute, everybody. We're battling through it. Those damn bots, dude. That is what happened last time. The same exact thing happened. I tried to delete one of those users, and it screwed up our connection to Facebook.
Yeah,
and I believe now it should be back. Hopefully, we will see comments flying in from the Facebook page again because I took it off and re-added it. Hopefully, that's good. We'll give it a minute and check it out while Chris is answering that question. So the curious case of Donovan Edwards, we'll call it. What exactly is he going to do now? Because his plan all along was to be 3 and done.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly think that at this point, just given the way the production is, it feels like he would need to come back next year. I know that he's been pretty upfront about that. This is going to be my last year in Ann Arbor. But I'm just not, there's a couple of things. So there's the production that we see this year, but then there's the things that happen, in the NFL combine and in the private workouts and what scouts can see and all of that stuff. And so certainly that's going to play a factor, but I don't know if I had to put my money in one or the other at this point, I think he comes back next year. I think, and I think Blake Corum set a perfect example for a guy that, wants to come back, wants to leave a lasting legacy, wants to do things within the community and sort of doing things the right way. He's laid a really nice blueprint out, and I would hate to lose Donovan after this year. Still there's I don't know what, 6-7 more games possibly left this season. He could certainly turn it around, explode in the second half, and and the NFL would make perfect sense. But as it stands right now, it certainly feels like he's going to come back next year.
Yeah. I mean,
and then you get the tandem of Donovan Edwards and
Jordan Marshall, Cole Cabana.
No.
Benjamin Hall.
A-Train Part 2.
Benjamin Hall.
No.
Kalel Mullings. I mean, dude, there's some bodies. There are still some bodies in that running back room, even if you remove Blake Corum. But obviously, most people would love to see Donovan come back. But again, it's it was his dream, his path was to play running back at Michigan for 3 years and go pro. You can't knock the kid for that. But now with the way that this season has played out, I just don't know if that's the most realistic option. Yeah, and
All
you've
right,
got
so
NIL to factor in now. I think we're good, by the way.
Well,
Yeah,
I was going to say, because it's been throwing me off a little bit. I see the comments. So we're back. We're running on Facebook. Everybody's got us out there. All right, cool.
Something is up with the connection to Facebook though, because I tried to comment back because somebody asked, "Is it working?" And when I commented back, it kicked me out of it again. I had to go and
just let me handle it. Let me handle it on my side if there's any sort of.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't know why that's happening. It used to be I could comment in there and nothing would happen. All right. Anyway, so there's a good first comment out of the gate. If you guys have any more, kind of stockpile them for maybe just a second.
Disaster start to the show. My goodness.
I mean, it's tech. You see it. You see it at the.
Not at the pro level. You don't, Brandon.
Oh,
Not
you see it.
Level.
You see the. Sometimes the broadcast glitches out on ESPN. That's a $1 billion enterprise.
Not like this, Brandon.
All right. No, YouTube should be working fine too. I'm getting comments from YouTube.
Anyway, what am I drinking? Right. It's called a Manmosa. It is a little bit of orange juice, a lot of wine, some fresh fruit, and then of course you got to top it off with a little umbrella because nothing says man like an umbrella in your drink.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, before we get to the comments and questions from you guys, we are going to bring on. Well, let's not throw rocks at the guy. Let's not boo him or hiss him or kick him out of here. But we are going to bring on Mr. Matthew Lounsbury, friend of the program, who was over there at Spartan Nation. And it's, Matthew, it's been a bit of a rough go in East Lansing this year. I mean, you're not gonna break any news here saying that people, Michigan State fans, are sad and down in the dumps a little bit, but what has the vibe been like covering that program given like what's going on this year? It's kind of crazy.
No, it's been really, really down, as you can probably imagine. There was some apprehension even going into the season, and Michigan State comes out and they win their first 2 games against Central Michigan and Richmond, and immediately afterwards the wheels literally fall off with the whole Mel Tucker situation. I know you guys have talked about that a little bit on your show. We've addressed it on our show.
What a loser! What a loser!
I mean, I will say, like,
fired for that.
One of the stupidest things a head coach has ever done in the history of probably college sports. So yeah, no bombs about it. Like, he threw away a lot of cash. We'll see if what happens with the whole settlement. I'm sure there'll be a settlement. He's going to sue the university. That's going to be a whole legal battle. Obviously, I know you guys have been following the coaching search talk on social media and all that, which we've talked about that. You and I, Brandon, we've talked about that quite a bit as well. So,
Matt, can you give us the insider scoop on what's going on with Urban Meyer right now? It seems like everybody out there in Spartan land, they're feeling pretty good, or they're at least pretty good at begging for Urban Meyer's services. What do you feel about it? What's your gut tell you about that?
My gut tells me that I'll believe it when I see it. Like, I'm not in that camp. It's really funny. Like, if you are on Twitter, everybody thinks, oh yeah, Urban Meyer's going to come and he's going to save the program. If you go to Facebook, it's much more split. There's a lot of people on Facebook who don't want Urban Meyer, given the fact that here's my stance on this, if I can take one. Mel Tucker was fired for having an inappropriate relationship with a university vendor, a woman who was not his wife, right? That's the gist of why he got fired. The lasting image of Urban Meyer's time in Jacksonville is him getting danced up by a guy in a bar who's not his wife.
Well,
that's
a girl.
That's what I got. A girl in a bar. My mistake. A girl in a bar who's not his wife. So, I think it would be a PR disaster. Now, some people have brought up the fact that, what's Michigan State have to lose at this point as far as like the media and all those things. So, that's a point. But I believe Urban Meyer when he says he has no interest in coaching again. Not the most trustworthy guy as far as sticking to his word, but I did read the story, and he lays out the comments about how it's never been more difficult to be a head coach than it is now. And with the transfer portal, with NIL, he's got mentioned his 4 grandchildren. So that's where I'm at right now. I'll believe it if I hear some actual smoke or whatever behind the whole Urban Meyer thing. But right now, I would put it at less than 3% chance at this point.
Yeah, it just feels like I'm with you, man. Like I've had kind of like a running burn in my head. It's like let me get this straight. You just fired a guy
Yeah.
for acting inappropriately over the phone in the privacy of his home, and you're going to replace him with a guy who acts inappropriately in public in a bar. Like I just don't really, I don't
Well,
really see how that works.
The appeal, the way it works is Urban Meyer wins national championships.
Well,
and I think that the fans in Michigan State, they're very clear about it. If you read it on social media, they don't care what the risks are so long as the result is a national championship. I think they're willing to take whatever baggage would come along with Urban Meyer. And to be quite honest, Brandon, there was a point where I was there as well. I remember early on in the Harbaugh era, things weren't going the way that we all hoped, and you start to get that itch and you're like, God damn it, I want to be in the playoffs. I want to win Big Ten championships. I want to compete. And I remember there were a lot of people that were looking at Urban Meyer wondering if that was a possibility. But I just think, Ohio State, Michigan, to a certain extent, even Florida, that's not Michigan State. That's not East Lansing.
No.
And I'm just not sure that, like I said, even with the conferences merging, and any head coaching job you can get in the Big Ten is going to be a premium job at this point with the way things are lining up. I'm just not so sure that Urban Meyer sees himself in East Lansing. And but there's a lot of people out there that want to see it. There's no doubt. I mean, you hear it on the 97 won the ticket. They're talking about it on social media. They're talking about it. It's tracking his plane. Where is he flying? Wasn't he in East Lansing? Wasn't he there a couple weeks ago or a week ago? Wasn't it reported he was in East Lansing?
I thought
there was some scuttlebutt about that, like some flight trackers and
good word.
I watched the show where Brandon used the word scuttlebutt. And I was like, I use that all the time.
Scuttlebutt out there in East Lansing.
Scuttlebutt about East Lansing about Urban Meyer. So there was a thing about like some flight tracking. You know how some people have time to do that. So there was a little bit of that a couple weeks ago, and I think that's part of that is kind of inspired this latest round of you got Justin Spiro on Twitter raising the flag, I guess, whatever that means. So
that guy.
Yeah. So it's out there. I can give you like who I would target, I guess, if I was Michigan State, if you want to know quickly.
Who is that guy, by the way? Is that guy is he just an alum? Is he a Michigan State alum? He's
an alum. He has a podcast. He has some ins with, he's had multiple players on the show. He actually had the guy the Surrender Cobra guy from Trouble with the Snap on his show a little while ago. So he's plugged in a little bit. He's plugged in.
Okay.
Yeah. Who would you go with? I mean, like I've it's not my beat, so I haven't dove deep into it, but there's a couple guys that make sense. And I want to say this quick about Urban Meyer too, then we'll move past him, then we'll get into Saturday's game. Like Chris, I think you hit it on the head. It's not Gainesville, it's not Columbus, it's East Lansing, so that's different. It's also not 49-year-old Urban Meyer. It's 59-year-old Urban Meyer who's coming off an absolute disaster, crash and burn stint in the NFL. It's not the same dude that it was when he left college football. And recruiting to East Lansing and Michigan State is not going to go the same way that it did at Florida and Columbus, Ohio. It's just not. So while he would do, I mean, he's probably top 3 if you're talking all-time greatest college football coaches. He would certainly be considered a home run hire. But he's not going to step in there in year one, start winning titles. Like that's not even remotely close to happening.
I don't think that would happen. But from a recruiting standpoint, I do think it would change things significantly. Now, let me just preface this by saying I think there's zero chance that he comes. But if he did go to East Lansing, I certainly think you would see the Spartans make a huge jump into becoming an annual, top 5 recruiting class just by having Urban Meyer there. I think they'd be able to do what they want to do from an NIL standpoint. I think there's a lot of high school kids that would want to come play with Urban Meyer given his pedigree. So I do think they would be able to possibly out-recruit Michigan. But I don't see a realistic scenario where that's a destination for a guy like Urban Meyer. To me, being on the Fox broadcast, he's making a lot of money doing that. It's a pretty comfy job. And I think he's been on record talking about things like, college football isn't the same. You've got to deal with all these other factors now. And I'm just not so sure that he or the people around him in his life want to dive back into that.
So college moves quick. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you entirely, but he hasn't coached at Ohio State since 2018. That means kids that he's recruiting, going to start recruiting, they're like 11. 10. Yeah, that's not the same as when he was coming off the run that he had at Florida and when he was climbing the ladder. It's a much different animal now. You've got the conferences changing. You've got NIL involved now. You've got all these different things. It's not it like I just think it's going to be very, very different than it was. People are expecting him to just be like, oh, this is just Ohio State North now. No, it's not. That's not what it's going to be. I think I don't even think he's coming. I don't think it's even like remotely a possibility, but the way that it's getting talked about, like it's kind of going to happen. And if it does, immediately, boom. I personally might welcome it. That way, Jim Harbaugh on Michigan can beat his ass a few times and that 7-0 nonsense can go away. He has to shut his restaurant down. Then where's he going to finger bang girls at, dude? He's got to find a new venue if that happens. I just don't think he wants to
deal with here. You see what I got to deal with here, Matt?
I don't think he wants to go down that path. That's all I'm saying. All right, Matthew, after we got off the rails just a little bit there.
A little bit there, yeah.
Who might be actually a realistic candidate for the Spartans that would actually take on Michigan in the coming years?
Yeah, so if I was Alan Haller, the athletic director over at Michigan State, the first guy I'm calling and the guy I'm pushing for is Jonathan Smith, the head coach at Oregon State. The trouble with Jonathan Smith is he's an Oregon State alum. He played there, obviously a lot of ties to the program. But here's a few reasons why I think he's a realistic and a good option for Michigan State. The Pac-12 is dissolving, and Oregon State and Washington State, they got left, floating out there in the West Coast by themselves. And so because of that, Michigan State can throw a whole lot more money at Jonathan Smith than his alma mater can, Oregon State. So that's you can buy out a guy's loyalty to his alma mater. I think a coaching guy. So that's why it's realistic. The reason why I think it's a good hire for Michigan State is he's turned Oregon State now into a real program. They're 6-1 this season. They just knocked up, I can't remember who they played last week, but they were in a ranked game last week, knocked them off. And this is kind of what he's done since taking over at Oregon State. The Beavers were a disaster under Gary Anderson previously. They went 2-10, 4-8, and 1-11 in 3 years under Gary Anderson. Jonathan Smith comes in 2018, 2-10 the first year, 5-7 the second year. COVID hits, they go 2-5. But then full length season again in 2021, they go 7-6. Last year 10-3, and then this year 6-1. So he's a proven program builder, and I think that's what Michigan State needs. You need a guy who's been a head coach before, not a guy who was 1 year at Colorado. Deion's not coming either. So not a guy who's just had 1 year of head coach experience like Mel Tucker did when he came from over Colorado. I think you need a program builder. So that's why I think he makes a lot of sense. He's got a proven track record of success now with Oregon State. And I'm curious about his recruiting ties a little bit too, because obviously he's a West Coast guy, but with the Big Ten bringing in Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, that's kind of opening up that West Coast a little bit more to other teams in the Big Ten. So how does that recruiting aspect fit in as well? So he'd be my first call. The second one I would call would be Mike Elko down at Duke for a lot of the same reasons. Doesn't have quite as much experience as a head coach as the Jonathan Smith does, but he's done a good job down there. Has Duke a very competitive program? Historically a basketball school. He knows what it's like to be out of the limelight. Like Tom Izzo is going to have the limelight as long as he's in East Lansing. So Mike Elko is a guy who doesn't have to have the spotlight. He's not a spotlight guy. But he's tough. He's gritty. He's a defensive-minded coach. That works pretty well under Mark D'Antonio. So
people are. I don't know if you can see the comments, man, but people are. This happens every time we bring in somebody from another site.
They don't give shit about Michigan State. I can just tell you that right now. What they do care about. What they do care about is the bludgeoning that's about to happen this weekend. I do think they're curious on your thoughts on that. I mean, you can't have any hope this weekend, right? You know what's coming. It seems like everybody knows what's coming. What are your thoughts this weekend? How do you see it playing out?
World peace.
Who should be the next prime minister in?
I mean, I got some thoughts on the whole Israeli-Palestine thing. If you really want to get into it,
no, let's not do that. We're not going there.
Oh man,
no, I don't blame you.
Can we just talk politics the rest of the show? Let's just do it. Let's just drink and talk politics.
Your audience dwindle.
This is a prime example of some of the stuff that Chris and I talk about. I'm genuinely curious about who's going to be hired at Michigan State. I like deep dives. I like to nerd out with football.
Nah,
Most people
you
don't
know
give
what?
a shit.
It
Let me
happened.
see.
It happened. When was it? When did we bring that douchebag from Ohio State on? Was that last year or 2 years ago?
That was 2 seasons ago, I think.
So we gave that guy like 15 minutes, and the people were out with pitchforks. They were ready. They were coming for blood. They were done with it. They were over.
He was Matthew's being so nice and polite.
Well, that's the thing you guys don't know about Matt is he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Gentle giant, we like to call him.
I was even trying to really go through it quickly for the audience, but they didn't.
He's about 7'3",
right.
just a phenomenal basketball player. But no, I'm curious. Let's get your thoughts on what you think is going to happen this weekend. Brandon and I have our thoughts. They're pretty strong. You cover it. What do you see happening?
I don't like the matchup for Michigan State. I think that's pretty obvious. The bigger, I'm going to say bigger concern, but the way Michigan State lost last week was just devastating. I actually think the first 3 quarters against Rutgers was probably the best 3 quarters that Michigan State has played this season. They're up 24-6. They're rolling. I've got half my immediate recap already written, and then it's just delete because in 5 minutes the game goes to hell. So I question, can you get yourself even for a rivalry game like this? And I will give credit to the guys who have been in front of the camera, in front of the media this week. They've put on a good front, and they do seem like they're locked in and ready to go. That's the verbiage they've used. But just psychologically, can you bounce back after they really should have won each of the last 2 games? They had a lead going into the 4th quarter against Iowa. Obviously, we know what happened last week. So mentally, where's the team at on top of all of the other distraction and things that have happened this week? So I will say this, and I'll probably get called a homer in your comments, which is kind of funny because you guys know I'm the furthest thing from a Michigan State homer. I try to be objective here, but I think Michigan State on paper is the most talented team that Michigan will have faced so far this season. That says more about Michigan's schedule than it does about Michigan State. But if you look at the recruiting rankings, Michigan State has some dudes on the team. Jordan Hall, the linebacker out of IMG Academy. Chance Ruckers was a high 3-star guy. He's going to start at corner this week. Dylan Tatum, I know, Brandon, you followed Dylan Tatum's recruitment when he was at West Bloomfield. Obviously close friends with Donovan Edwards. So they have some talented guys. Caden Hauser, the replacement at quarterback, 4-star kid out of St. John Bosco in California. So from a talent perspective, I think this is the best team Michigan will face so far this year. The problem is it's a very undisciplined team. They turn the ball over at an unbelievable rate. They're -6, I think, on the year. That's 125th in the country. They're one of the most penalized teams in the country. And against Michigan, a team who it's like they button up the shirt, they put on the tie, and they go to work every day, and it's like nothing phases them. I don't like that matchup for those reasons, the discipline aspect of it.
Is it definitely going to be Hauser? I know there's been some people kind of pounding the table to get Noah Kim back out there, but
I thought Noah Kim was a Heisman candidate earlier in the year. That faded away pretty quickly. What happened with Noah Kim?
Noah Kim is a really good dude, but there's a reason why he was a very low, 3-star quarterback. He's a small guy. And he struggled. Once the competition level went up, it was tough sledding. He had 1 touchdown and 6 interceptions in the first 3 Michigan State games against Power 5 competition. Had 5 touchdown passes in the first 2 weeks. So yeah, when things got tough, and it wasn't all on Noah Kim. I don't want to put the whole burden on him. It certainly wasn't. But Caden Hauser has the higher upside. You have the whole transfer portal thing with Mel Tucker being out. We don't even know what the roster is going to look like next year. But Caden Hauser, redshirt freshman, guy you can start to build around. So yeah, there you go.
I feel so badly for Matt. Just
see what you did. You see what you did, Brandon.
Just the salt of the earth.
You see what you've done.
One of the best dudes I've ever met, and people are just brutal. Time to go, Matt. That's what they're saying. Matt needs a drink. Matt needs
some alcohol.
All right, Matt's been here about 10, 12 minutes. Let's do this and get you out of here.
Let's get the prediction.
Before they start showing up at your house, Matt.
There's
What
a
do
reason
you-
why I typically stay out of comment sections. I'll just say that.
What do you think it's going to look like? I mean, how bad is this thing going to get on Saturday?
My biggest concern for Michigan State is I don't know where the points are going to come from. Michigan hasn't allowed more than 10 points to anybody all year. And Michigan State really struggles running the football still, even, I don't even know if you can call it year 4 of the Mel Tucker era anymore because that whole debacle.
Nah, he owns this. He owns this.
No,
year
I
for
agree
sure.
with
This
you
is
on
his
that.
baby.
No, I agree. This is his baby. This is his coaching staff. So, not sure where the offense is going to come from. We did a show earlier tonight, me and my co-host Aiden, and I had Michigan 41, Michigan State 17. That was my score. The line is right there at 24, and that's kind of how I see it playing out. Again, Michigan State's defense is going to present more challenges than probably similar to the Rutgers game, I guess, for Michigan.
There you have it. I haven't really put together a complete prediction yet, Chris. I don't know. Have you? We do that typically on Friday.
Yes, Spain and domination is my prediction.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, I was on Jamie's radio show earlier today, and I was like, it's going to look just like the last 3 games. How could it not? I think Michigan State's in a similar boat.
High 50s, low 60s. Sparty might get a score.
I don't know about that, but
I'm telling you, Brandon.
I'd love to see it.
A Harbaugh doesn't forget. What did he say? A man of faith forgives something or other, forgets. I don't know. Bottom line is
Harbaugh's remember.
A Harbaugh also takes his starters out up 20. So there is
and
that.
then you know what? His secondary guys start whooping ass. So
all right, Matthew, thank you for having some thick
appreciate
skin.
you, Lounsbury.
I can't wait to see what they say about you after you leave. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person on Saturday, man, because we're gonna be we'll all be there, and we'll see how it actually plays out on the field.
I'm gonna give them some grace too. I'm assuming they're so angry because I'm taking away from their Q&A time, fan-led Wednesday and all that.
Well,
so.
a little bit, maybe a little bit. I think it's just rivalry week. This is what happens.
For sure.
This is anytime we have brought a guest on from particularly a rival team, they're not having it. The people are not having it.
I just hope they like me a little bit better than the Ohio State guy you brought on a couple.
I'm sure.
Oh, his attitude alone was.
Nah, he was smug. He was that guy sucked. That guy sucked.
Even Chris was like, he was texting me like, I hate this guy.
I was telling Brandon, I'm like, wrap it up. Get him out of here.
All right, we'll get him out. We'll get Matthew out of here. We'll see you on Saturday, big fella. Thanks for the time.
Appreciate it. Have a good one. We'll see you on Saturday.
All right. Oh boy.
Oh my God, you guys out there, you're brutal. You're brutal.
Matt's
a sweetheart.
Folks. Yeah,
Matt
he
is a sweetheart. If you only knew him personally, you'd love him. Even though he's even though he covers the Michigan State Spartans.
Yeah. So no, it's I kind of wondered how it would go because we talked about it. We're like, we need to bring a guest on from somewhere else. But Matt's a personal friend of ours, and I thought it would be good to get his perspective. And
know what? Hopefully that gave you guys plenty of times to get your questions right.
There's that too.
Fan-led Wednesday has been a little bit dry. It's been Brandon and I sitting here trying to think of things to say. So we need some questions here for fan-led.
Matthew was good. Rob went over like a fart in church. Come on, man.
Look, I need a wine refill. I'm calling it in right now.
Good Lord, calling in a wine refill via the phone.
Calling it in right now.
I'm gonna put you on the solo play. I'm on the solo playlist and go make myself a drink.
A wine refill real quick.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate it.
All right, Chris is gonna take over the show for the next 20 while I go to the bathroom and get a drink.
I'm just gonna sit here and get drunk and answer as many questions as I possibly can.
No, I'm kidding. I'm not.
Buckle in.
All right. I like that question right there. We'll start it off with that one. Jay Lee from YouTube. Is Jim Harbaugh the best coach currently in college football? Yeah, he's in the freaking discussion. There's no question about it. He's in the discussion. Anybody who's followed me in my career knows that I'm not a president of the Jim Harbaugh fan club. It's never been anything personal. I just thought he kind of didn't do what he was supposed to do through 4 or 5 years. Now, He's doing like I wrote it today. Since the 2020 season, the 2-4 COVID season, he hasn't missed. He has not missed since 2020, whether it's hi Chantel, how's everything going?
He said he asks how everything is going.
Oh,
Did
you
she
know,
just-
swimmingly.
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 Filling up.
All right.
As in drowning in Chardonnay over here.
It's not sure.
Um,
Switch to Sauvignon Blanc.
whether it's been Harbaugh's hires of Mike McDonald or Jesse Minter, or his praise and promotion of Ben Herbert, the recruiting classes that he's brought in, the kind of kids he's building his program with, the successes in the transfer portal, like he hasn't missed, dude. He's been so on point since that season that yes, from 2021, 22, and now 23, Jim Harbaugh is absolutely in the discussion as one of, if not the best coaches in the country.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. And when we were talking about what what the new contract should be, highest paid coach in the Big Ten, I think you can make a strong argument that he should be one of the highest paid coaches in the country. Right up there with the likes of Saban and Dabo and all the other guys that are making top dollar. What he's done at the University of Michigan over the last 2 years has been incredible. Looked like he was on his way out in 2020, and the way he responded, the way he fought through it, the way that he sort of rebuilt this team from the inside out, the guys he recruited, the staff that he put together, and doing all of that, quite frankly, without one of the best NIL programs in the country. I mean, let's just be real about it. Like there's some NIL here. There's no doubt. There's Michigan players that are getting paid, no question about it. But when you look around the country at what some of these other programs are able to do in terms of NIL, Jim Harbaugh doesn't have that yet. So,
but to that point, real quick though, and I think, I don't know if it's by accident, by design, or if it just worked out this way, or if it's just plain old dumb luck by Jim Harbaugh, but Michigan's approach to it seems to be the most sustainable, like balanced. Because you look at Jimbo Fisher and what was going on and out, they're just throwing money at it. It hasn't
but
worked.
Listen, I think there's a happy meet. Would you want Dante Moore in Ann Arbor right now?
That'd be nice.
Learning under JJ. Do you want Bryce Underwood?
Absolutely.
So I think that in the right situation, having a package ready to be able to bring in a guy or lure him in or whatever you got to do, to me, it's like that's the way the game is played right now. And at some point, it feels like you're going to have to play it. I agree with you. It feels like Michigan's model is the most sustainable. Water will find its level. And, ultimately, you see it in programs around that are basically buying players, and then they're in the transfer portal a year or two later. But there's also some guys that it feels like Michigan just can't miss out on. And when you're in a situation like that, and you've got a kid that's looking around the country at all these different programs, and a handful are willing to throw the bag, yeah, and education at Michigan is great. Being a Michigan man is awesome. All the things that Michigan has to offer is great. But I also think you got to be able to come to the table with something from an NIL standpoint that is enough to bring these big-time players in. And look, I know that Michigan is good this year, and we talk about what's sustainable. Look beyond this year, though. Ohio State is recruiting phenomenally. Michigan's doing all right in recruiting. They brought in some good talent, but not at the level that Ohio State is at the moment. So what's this program going to look like next year when they lose 20 guys to the NFL draft? I don't know. There's not a ton of elite talent coming back. So that's where I get concerned. I feel like right now they're at the best place they've been since Jim Harbaugh's been there. But at some point, you don't want to miss out on Dante Moore. You don't want to miss out on Bryce Underwood. And I think NIL is certainly a big factor in that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many different angles to that, because I was just thinking while you were talking through some of that, if you could get some truth serum into Jim Harbaugh and sit down with him and say, do you want a kid? Do you want a Dante Moore if he's fine with just going somewhere to get some money? Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, Jim Harbaugh is all about dudes who love football, love Michigan, want to be there, would be nowhere else on the planet. And look, I think there was a big part of Dante Moore that wanted to come to Michigan. He visited a ton. He was really, really close with Devin Gardner. He's a local kid. He's from Detroit. And if Michigan had been able to throw a little bit at him, he probably would be a Wolverine. But he's not. He's out at UCLA and he's playing pretty well, actually. He looks like he's going to be really freaking good in another year or two when he's been there. So it's such an interesting topic, man, because yeah, the Jimbo Fisher approach and just throwing bag after bag after bag of kid, that didn't work. They were terrible last year. A bunch of people left. Miami, it's been a little bit of a struggle up and down. There's other programs out there like, the Stanfords and the Northwesterns of the world that really didn't get involved in NIL at all, and they are awful now. Like they can even barely field a competitive team. So Michigan's somewhere in the middle of that, and that's where a lot of schools are kind of operating right now. And then you've got the playoff expanding coming. It's just so much, dude. And Jim Harbaugh's navigated it damn near perfectly up to this point. But you're right. After next year, things look a lot different, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of plays out. Matt Kirby, good question here. This is one that I haven't watched a lot of Michigan State. Chris and I touch on this all the time, covering games like we do, especially road games. You're on the road, you're watching Michigan, you're back on the road. Like some of those Saturdays, we didn't watch another football game besides Michigan. Right. I honestly haven't seen a ton of Michigan State on TV. I think I was like deathbed sick when they were on TV the one weekend too, and I didn't watch them that weekend either. But on paper, they do have a pretty good run defense. And I think most people would agree that Michigan has not run the ball as dominantly as most thought. So I do wonder what the day is going to look like on Saturday for Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, Kalel Mullings if he's back out there and available, and even J.J. McCarthy as a ball carrier. So yeah, I'm not worried, but I think Michigan's just way too good in just about every area. But that is the one. Okay, so essentially, if they get shut down running the ball, then JJ has to throw it a bunch. Fine with that. Totally fine with that. So, but that would be the one thing, because I just don't think they're very good in any other area.
No, I mean, my biggest concern is I don't want to see what we saw against Indiana and what we've seen a couple times this year, where Michigan comes out of the gate a little bit slow, maybe a little bit sloppy with the ball, and you give a team like Michigan State some confidence in their own building in prime time, and suddenly you've got a team who's not as good as you, but playing like they feel like they are. The crowd starts to get into it, the momentum starts to change, and then things get a little more difficult than they need to be. So I think for me, that I don't really have a concern about MSU in particular. My concern is more on the Michigan side, and are they going to come out and assert their dominance right from, I mean, what was it? We saw it against ECU, right? Michigan was hammering the ball out of the gate and didn't even make it 5 yards, and had to punt it away and give it back to the Pirates. And we've seen that a couple times this year. I think Michigan needs to start the game, assert their dominance, score first, most importantly, and then everything will take care of itself. But what you don't want, and we've seen it happen time and time again, that a more talented Michigan team can go into East Lansing and have problems with the Spartans if you let them hang around or you give them confidence.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt. And man, it's funny you bring so many things I feel like I've been thinking about and talking about this week, whether it's in my own head or today on the radio show or when I was getting ready to jump on here. There have been so many years where Michigan State has not been as good as Michigan, but when the game's getting closer and closer, I'm just like, oh, dude, I just have a feeling, they're good enough at this. Their D-line is nasty. They're physical. They make running the ball tough. Or, they used to have that shutdown secondary that just made it really tough to throw the ball on them. Or, they had quarterbacks that I couldn't stand, but they just seemed to always make the big plays, make the right throw, keep them in a game when they shouldn't be in a game, or there'd be some other weird thing. Like there's always something that made me have pause about the matchup. I've got none of that this year. And I can just say it objectively. There's been plenty of years where I'm like, God damn it, Michigan State is going to be a pain in the butt. They're going to be a thorn in their side. They might get an upset win. I could see it happening. Dude, there's no scenario where I see it this weekend. If it happens, I'll be as shocked as I've ever been when watching a Michigan football game, because I see nothing that Michigan State can bring to the table that will challenge this Michigan team right now.
Yeah, and Jenna, typically I think Brandon and I would agree with you. It's a rivalry game. It's anybody's game. You can't count them out. But I mean,
I don't think so this year.
This year just is different. Like in years prior, even though Michigan State might not have been as good, they still had some ponies. They still had some threats. They still had something that they did really well that you had to look at and be like, that could be a concern. You look at this Michigan State team and they just don't have it. And I think the Rutgers game was a perfect example. If you are a good team, if you are a sound team, a solid team, you don't blow an 18-point lead in the fourth quarter. And for as much as everybody gave him shit when he was here, Matt's spot on. The Spartans are undisciplined. They're trying out, they're working through quarterback issues. Defensively, not that strong, not a strong running game, not a good passing game. There's not really anything they do that you can point to and say, that's going to present a problem to this Michigan team. Now, on the other side, when you look at what Michigan does, again, and we've asked this on the show multiple times, you tell me where the weakness is in this Michigan football team. Tell me, where is the weakness? Because we've watched it now for 7 weeks. We've seen it in all phases, and I don't see a single weakness offensively, defensively, anywhere on that field. They play mistake-free football. They don't beat themselves. And they're heavily motivated to go into East Lansing. And there's a lot of guys that are going to be playing in this rivalry for the last time. Blake Corum being one of them. A lot of the guys on the offensive line, some of the defensive standouts, Mike Sainristil, possibly Rod Moore, Chris Jenkins, all those guys. They're very fired up to go into East Lansing and avenge that loss from 2021. I think that's more on the mind than what happened in the tunnel last year. It's the fact that the last time they went to East Lansing, the last time they went there, they lost.
Yep. Yeah, Mike Barrett. I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of Makari Page, in-state kid, bunch of guys on that team that are going to play a lot on Saturday that have, they've had this one's always circled. Don't get me wrong, but I'm with you, dude. I just don't see it. The mojo that tends to be there for Michigan State exactly when they need it against Michigan. I just don't think it's going to be there. There's no. A few years back, that Aaron Burbridge, who's just a monster receiver on the outside. Connor Cook, going back to the days of him just making clutch throw. I mean, it's an NFL guy. He didn't stick in the NFL, but he got a look in the NFL. They've had some little aspect, some little facet every year that made them just scary enough that if you let them hang around, Kenneth Walker, obviously 2 years ago, like you just mentioned, the last time in East Lansing was a loss. So I don't see it this year. I mean, I'm as open and honest as I can possibly be when it comes to picking Michigan or not picking them or being objective. I think Michigan State's going to get trucked on Saturday. I don't think it's even going to be close. I don't know exactly what score I see yet, but I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to be another 30-point plus win, just like it was the last 2 weeks on the road at Minnesota and at Nebraska. I think Michigan
very, very similar to Nebraska and Minnesota.
I think they're the same kind of team. I think you put Michigan State on the field with Minnesota or Nebraska right now, it's a pretty close game, no matter where you play it. And so because of that, I think Michigan's going to really take care of business on Saturday.
And then Matt, talk about worry. You get into that situation where Michigan is now, they're up 30, 40 points late in the second half. Now injuries become, dirty play becomes an issue. Getting scrappy becomes an issue because, say what you want about Michigan State talent-wise, they're certainly not going to be interested getting their ass kicked for an entire second quarter or the second half when the game's already over. That's when you can start to see some of the ugly things come out. So, again, it's Michigan needs to get off to a fast start, can't be lazy out of the gate. And then from there on out, take care of business and avoid injuries.
Yeah. Jenna, I really like this question because I don't know if if it's part of Jesse Minter's immediate plan to be a head coach or if he's going to be targeted by an NFL team like we saw with Mike McDonald because he's got an NFL history. But I think he's a star. I think both him and Sharon Moore, the offensive and defensive coordinators on this team, are absolute freaking rock stars in the profession. And it's funny that you bring up this question because today at the press conference, we talked to Chris Partridge, defensive coach, linebackers coach, helps out with special teams. I asked him just pretty simple question. What is Jesse Minter's biggest strength as a coach? And of course he listed 25 things, but they're all true. I mean, he just went down the list of all the things that Jesse Minter does on an elite level and kind of finished it up with saying he'll be a great head coach soon, very, very soon. I don't know if that was like a read between the lines, meaning this is like the last year you're going to watch him at Michigan, but I think he could go at any time because he's that good and he's going to have opportunities. I don't know what that looks like or what his individual plan is, but you would think that most assistant coaches, especially ones that have already climbed the ladder up to the coordinator position, they want to run their own show. And so I don't know when that opportunity might come for him, but I would just say, relish the time that he's here because I don't think it's going to be for all that long.
You know what? I agree with you on every point. I think you could say the same about Sharon Moore. To me, he feels like the closest. I'd be surprised if Sharon Moore is. I would have more confidence that Jesse Minter's back next year than I do Sharon Moore. I think
That's fair.
he's starting to get the love that he deserves. I went back and watched the Michigan-Indiana game on the broadcast. Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson talking about Sharon Moore being like, this rising star. Like, he's getting the love he deserves. He wants to be a head coach, and I think that's going to come sooner than later. Where is it? Where did I see it? It just popped up, and I think it's a true statement. Dave Witt from the YouTube page says not a single player on MSU will start at Michigan. And again, in previous years, I might say, well, you could look at some guys here. I think that's an entirely true statement. I don't think they have one starter on that Spartan squad that would start at the University of Michigan. Not one.
No.
Not on the offensive line. We know that. Not at quarterback. Not at
Cal Halliday? No love for no gloves?
Zero drip, chasing chickens barehanded, Cal Halliday?
Zero drip, Cal Halliday? No.
Dude, who the hell doesn't wear gloves defensively? It's unheard of.
Oh, Lounsbury chimes in from backstage. The kicker. The kicker would get more run than
Which kicker?
It's Noah Kim's brother, I believe.
Jonathan Kim? Nah, fuck that guy.
Wow.
I'll take my chances with Turner.
Chris really lets the fan come out on Michigan State week. It happens.
Dude, I just hate them so much.
Aggressively.
I hate them so much. I hate their fan base drives me nuts. I can't stand them.
It's tough. It's a tough group.
They're an awful bunch. They really are. And you go back to the days of Kirk Cousins and Connor Cook, and remember what it was like when we had Rich Rod and Brady Hoke, and how bad it was on this side. They relished in our misery. They loved it, and I haven't forgotten, Brandon. I had to suffer through 2 decades of that.
All right, I talked about the potential game script with Jamie Morris earlier today, Chris. Because Michigan State does have a pretty respectable rush defense. They're 32nd in the country rush defense wise. And Michigan is 40th in the country running the ball, like in terms of pure numbers. Now that's not entirely indicative of what's going on, because Michigan has certainly taken the foot off the gas late in games, and there's some different nuances to those numbers. But point being, I think the rush defense, the front seven, is Michigan State's strength. So if they do decide to sell out and take away the run, put 9 in the box, which we saw like a far lesser opponent in ECU have a little success doing that. Granted, it was 5 weeks ago. But I do think there's a chance that Michigan State could muddy it up a little bit and make running the ball at least tough for Michigan. That's where I said, all right, cool. Now JJ gets to throw it 35 times, and that is a problem for Michigan State, because they are terrible defending the pass, and they do not want any part of Roman Wilson, Colston Loveland, Donovan Edwards down the field, Cornelius Johnson getting loose on a double move. They want none of that. So I actually think that this stat line that Brady puts up right here is very realistic, even though that's a little bit inflated from what we typically see from JJ McCarthy.
I am very confidently taking the under on both. I think in a game like this, even if it's what Michigan State does well on the defensive front, I think the Wolverines are going into Saturday looking to pummel the Spartans in the trenches for 4 quarters. I think that's the type of game it's going to be. You're going to see, if Khalil Mullins is back, you're going to see that. You're going to see Blake Corum. You're going to see Donovan Edwards. You might see Benjamin Hall. You're going to see a lot of rushing coming out of the Michigan offense, I think. Some passing from JJ McCarthy, but at the end of the day, look, we saw it last weekend, and I'm not saying this based on any inside information that I have, just from what I see with my own eyes and from what JJ has said. I think he said it against Minnesota. I don't think that ankle is 100%. And we saw him limping around a little bit in Indiana, and I think he mentioned it against Minnesota, where, it's nice to be able to sit in the 4th quarter and kind of rest because the ankle isn't 100%. I don't think they're going to ask JJ to do any more than absolutely necessary on Saturday. I don't think he's going to have to do it. I think Michigan's going to be just fine running it 40 times, racking up the stats on the ground, and making for a long evening for Michigan State. So I'll take the under on 250, even on 2 touchdowns for Roman Wilson. I love Roman Wilson. But that's how you demoralize a team. That's how you
You're
bully
right.
a team. You do it in the trenches, and I think that's what Jim Harbaugh is certainly going to try to do. Just bully them all evening long.
Well, my thought is like that's what they would have done a year ago. I don't know if they're in that same mind. I just remember at times, just like pounding your head against the wall sometimes when you're like, dude, there's 9 guys in there. You have 6 to block. Like the math just isn't going to work. Yeah, Chris, like I said, we did that for like 7 or 8 weeks last year where we're like, stop running it so much all the time. Yes, it's working most of the time. Yes, Blake Corum's on a tear, but JJ's pretty damn good. Not that Jim Harbaugh didn't know that last year, but now everybody knows J.J. McCarthy's really damn good. I think throwing the ball is something that they could have. I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree at all. Like when everybody knows you're running it and you get 5, 8, 9 yards, 13, like it's so demoralizing to a defense. But receivers running open can be demoralizing too, because we saw that shit against Ohio State for a couple years in a row with Don Brown's defense.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to back up. I'm also going to back up what I said on Monday as well. I was speculating a little bit just based on what I saw from the sideline down shooting photos where JJ came up limping. It looked like Jim was a little bit frustrated with like, why didn't you just get down? Why didn't you slide? JJ took a little bit of a hit. I rewatched the game on the broadcast. I think that's exactly what happened. I think Jim Harbaugh I could see I'm not going to say what he said, but he clearly wasn't happy with what happened there. And I think, you've got a bye week coming up the week after the Michigan State game. I just don't see any need for J.J. McCarthy to go out there, sling the ball around the field when I think that the Michigan offensive line can handle their business and you can hammer it away with Corum and Edwards and Mullings and, CJ or whoever the hell it's going to be back there. I think that's what they're going to be content doing. You can't risk injury to J.J. McCarthy in this game.
Breaking news. Alex Orgy's actually going to play the entire game just to protect J.J. McCarthy.
I would love it. I'd sign off for it. I'd sign off on Jack Tuttle. I think Michigan could easily beat Michigan State with Jack Tuttle behind center on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So that number sounds kind of big, 250 for JJ, but so far this year, JJ McCarthy has thrown for 280, 278, 143, 214, 156, 219, and 222. So like 250's not. He's gone over it twice.
Under 250 in Big Ten play.
He's
every single
correct.
week.
That's correct. Yes, he's gone over it twice. He's been right around it 3 times in Big Ten play, 214, 219, 222. I mean, it's not like 250 is some crazy number, but it's not really exactly what they've tried to do or what.
Is he going to play in the fourth quarter? Does he play a single snap in the fourth quarter in East Lansing?
I don't know about that. I don't think so. Not if it looks like last week.
Might be a good over-under question on Friday.
Might be a great over-under question. Looking for a question. Well, we talked a little bit about this. Do we think that Michigan State's going to play dirty, try to injure a top player? How much of a concern is that? Have they learned from the tunnel crap last year? God, I hope not, dude. I mean, I hope. I said this on Monday. It doesn't really matter, like what arena you're in. Like it could be the people you work with, people at your church. You round up 100 people at a grocery store. Chances are, like 5 or 8 of them are going to be shitheads. Like that's just people, and so that means if you take the entire roster at Michigan State, you've probably got 5 or 8 that would hurt a Michigan player if they had the chance, and like. That means that Michigan might try to do the same thing. Like this is going to be an emotional, heated game for lots of reasons. The loss 2 seasons ago at East Lansing, the tunnel stuff for sure. The fact that they just don't like each other out of the gate, even if this thing had been completely clean and on the up and up to this point. Like there's a lot of reasons why this thing could get a little bit nasty. I just hope it doesn't, man. I mean, because Michigan's going to win the game, and they've got a hell of a lot more to lose than Michigan State does. So if somebody's going to take an L in a big way other than on the scoreboard, it would be Michigan. Like it just because they've got so much more to lose. And Michigan State on the flip side has got more to be angry about and will be more upset and will be more, flying off the handle because of emotion. So I don't know, man. I'd be lying if I said, "Oh, it's not going to happen." I'd be lying if I said that. I think there's a chance for someone to do something shitty. I mentioned it earlier. I think it was Shea Patterson that took a vicious hit from one of the Panashuk brothers a handful of years ago, like a 3-4 step lead up and run, and just jacked him in the back, like after Shea had thrown a pass. That was at Michigan. So yeah, dude, I do think that you need to be on the lookout for a little bit of this in some ways.
I don't think there's any question about it, and especially if the game goes the way we think it's going to go, where Michigan is going to be up comfortably in the second half, talking like a 30, possibly 40-point lead in the third quarter. I just don't see a scenario where at home the Spartans. I mean, they said it during this week. I think it was Trey Mosley said nothing mattered before and nothing matters after. This is the game for us. This is what matters for us. And so if you're going into that game with that type of mentality and 2 quarters in, you're getting your ass kicked pretty good at home in front of your own fans and the season's already off the rails. Yeah, I think there's going to be some boneheaded moments that we'll see on Saturday. And put it this way, I'm confident we'll see dirty play. I hope it just doesn't lead to injury. That's my biggest concern. But I'm fairly confident we're going to see some things that kind of make you raise your eyebrow and maybe draw a personal foul flag.
Well, do you want to grab that one too? We're in the same exact.
I didn't even see that. I didn't even see that down at the bottom. Good timing.
Under 2.5. Yeah, personal fouls by Sparty.
3 would be a lot. I'd be right at 2. I'd be right at 2, and I would think there's probably 1 or 2 that don't get caught or called. You know, they'll show some things on the replay, but I'd take the under, but I'd be right at 2.
Fantastic question here from Vince S. Is Creed in the same family of music as Nickelback? Sub question. What other bands should you add to that Spotify playlist? So running joke, back in this would have been high school probably. I actually used to not. I would. What's the word I'm looking for? I fully embrace. There we go. I fully embrace the fact that I liked a certain kind of music that other people found kind of like mainstream lame. I don't care. If it makes me vibe, dude, I go with it. I don't care what other people say. So here's what I created a band in my head, or kind of a super group called Creed Hinderback Daughtry. Okay? That was like the 4 horsemen of this era. Creed Hinderback Daughtry. So if you want to throw those, that's Creed, that's Hinder, that's Nickelback, and that's Chris Daughtry. Creed Hinderback Daughtry. You throw those 4 on a playlist, you'll be golden. You'll be golden by Saturday. That's all I have to say about that. Chris, anything? Creed Hinderback Daughtry. Creed Hinderback Daughtry. That's the power 4 right there.
I mean, the fact that you created a super band out of terrible bands.
Well, it was just a label. Like, I mean, just thinking like you could just substitute, like take the singer for any one of those songs and have them stand in with the other bands and you'll be good. That's kind of where I was at with that. See, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I could poke fun at the fact that they're not awesome on a deep musical level. Risen Gates. I mean, dude.
Risen Gates?
Dude, that's how he says it. He doesn't pronounce the P, I'm pretty sure. And that always made me laugh.
We need to move on. I can't do any more Nickelback Creed.
It's what the people want. You see what happens.
Nickel Creed back. Who is it?
Creed Hinderback Daughtry, dude. Creed
Hinderback Daughtry.
60 million records sold worldwide, dude. There's a reason.
Well, how many records did Hanson sell, Brandon?
Well, you put on Mbop for your boy. I'll get down to that too.
No, please tell me that's not part of the equation.
It's not part of the same equation, but it's all part of this equation that you see before you. Hey.
Okay, I just saw we lost 20 viewers within the last 10 seconds.
Wow. One of the members of Creed is actually here. No, I'm kidding. How sick would that be if Scott Stapp just rolled in, dude?
I would rather bring back Matt Lounsbury than have any members from any of those bands pop up.
Scott Stapp, Chad Kroger, they're all here. They're all here. And
my goodness.
God, how fun would that show be? Hurry, I'm calling. I'm calling. All right. Trying to find another question here. You guys got a lot of comments, not so many questions.
Come on. We're only an hour 4 into the show.
The peanut
It's
gallery
rivalry week here.
The peanut gallery can keep a lot of that stuff to themselves. Let's get some real questions going here, folks. Come on. Still waiting for that 40-yard dash. Creed Hinderback Daughtry will be at the end. Chris will have video of me. Show me what it's like. Dude, slow-mo. Can you believe it, dude? Can you wait?
I can't wait for the video. I can certainly wait for the music.
Here we go. All right. This is an in-state game. Donovan Edwards was recruited very heavily by Michigan State. He's got a buddy there. Matthew mentioned him, Dylan Tatum. Trey Mosley is also a West Bloomfield alum. There's been a lot of crossover between those two programs and that high school team. Ron Bellamy was there. There's a lot. Anytime you get a powerhouse program like West Bloomfield, they're going to send players to both schools. Does that matter in this one? Do you see Donovan scoring? Do you see a big game for Trey Mosley? Do you see Dylan Tatum trying to make a big play in the secondary? Does it matter?
No, because Michigan has a game plan and they're going to stick to it. And I think we saw that. We saw that last week against Indiana, that for as much as a player as you may want to make a play, like the coaching staff's going to stick to doing what they believe is right. Hence the timeout when Donovan Edwards was waving everybody to stay back, keep me in. I don't think a lot of that matters. Does he find the end zone again? I would say probably. And I say that because I think it's going to be a heavy rushing evening for the Michigan Wolverines. I think that's where they're going to try to make their point. I think we're going to see a heavy emphasis on the rush game. And I think they're going to do whatever they can to protect JJ, like I said, because I don't believe that ankle is 100%. We've heard it now for a couple weeks. We saw him limping around towards the end of the Indiana game. And, the last thing you want to do going into the bye week is take some injury that's going to keep you out. I mean, look, you've got Purdue and then you've got Penn State on the road. You got to go into the bye week healthy. You got to protect QB1. Given all those factors, I think Donovan Edwards gets in the end zone again.
All right. I think this one was earlier, Vaughn. I like this question. We've had some discussion about this before. There's been this narrative that like Michigan is built to beat Ohio State, but Ohio State's more built to beat like a Georgia or an Oklahoma I don't adhere to that. I think football is football. So to answer your question bluntly, yeah, I think Michigan can beat anybody in the country because I would flip the question right back around. Can that high-powered offense handle what Michigan's trying to do? And I think the answer to that is no in a lot of cases. I mean, we've seen it now for 2 years in a row against Ohio State, once in Ann Arbor, once in Columbus. That damn TCU game, man, it just makes me I just want to like snap something because Michigan did so many things in that game that they had not done all year. That
it was
led
the
to
awful
them,
field conditions. We know that.
That led to them losing that game. So yes, to put it bluntly, yes, Michigan can compete with a high-powered offense. They can absolutely beat a high-powered, quote-unquote, offensive, like, finesse team because their defense is better and more stout than most, and their offense is something that teams just don't deal with on a week-in, week-out basis.
And what I was going to say was exactly what you said is I think that you're asking the wrong question. It's can a high-powered offense do what they do against Michigan's defense?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the answer is no. I just think they're so sound, whether you try to test Will Johnson, you got to deal with the defensive front. At the linebacker, they're stacked. In the secondary, they're stacked. I mean, everywhere on the field, defensively, Michigan is stacked. And I saw the stat rewatching the game. They haven't had a defensive lineman play over 30 snaps in a single game yet so far this season. So they're rotating guys. They're deep. They're fresh. I think what PJ Flex said a couple of weeks ago rings true. It's like you don't know who's out there from rep to rep, play to play, because they rotate so many guys, and every guy that comes in is just as good as the guy who went off. So I think if you're one of those high-powered offenses and you come up against a defense like Michigan, I think you're going to have a problem. You're going to get out of rhythm pretty quickly, and you're going to see kind of what happened with Caleb Williams against Notre Dame. That whole finesse type thing, that whole high-powered thing that works out in the Pac-12 doesn't work so well when you face a sound defense that can smash you in the mouth.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I think it's I just don't know where that idea came from. That like one team's built to beat this team, but that they're so good.
Well,
They can't beat this other good team. I'm like, what? Like,
I have an idea where it came from. I know that a lot of Ohio State fans that was how they were coping with what happened in November. They were saying, well, yeah, you guys, you're finally beat. You're built to beat us, but you can't win a national championship. You're not built to win a national championship, which is like, well,
I guess I would ask, like,
weird coping mechanism.
Oh, another point I wanted to make about the whole Urban Meyer.
I don't know, Rob, I do not know, but Joe, anybody, you can see him in the comments right now. Here, you know what? We'll just take care of this on my end. Let's see if I can.
What do we got? Oh, yeah, I'm not going to try again because it keeps screwing stuff up every time I do.
Let me try on my end here.
Back to the Urban Meyer thing too. The offense that he ran, 10, 12, 15 years ago, it was like, what is this? This is so cutting edge. That's not the case anymore either. A lot of his offensive advantages are going to go away. And what made me think of that was, what would you call Ohio State? Are they not clearly built to be a high-powered offense? And Michigan beat the shit out of them 2 years in a row. So I just don't, that question and that approach and that wasn't a knock on your question, Vaughn. That's just, like I said, that narrative has been created that Michigan's built to beat Ohio State, but can't beat a high-powered offensive team. And I'm like, well, what is Ohio State? Like the last couple of years, they've had quarterbacks that have been major, NFL prospects, some of the best wide receivers to ever step on a college field. They're a high-powered offense, and Michigan handled them 2 years in a row. So I just don't know. I feel like that question got, or that narrative got kind of created out of thin air. I don't really understand it, to be honest. Let's see. Maybe we've
got people accusing Matt Lounsbury of being the bot. He's in here. He's created a fake profile to come get his revenge. Do not click on the link from whatever bot you see.
Someday we may be able to bring Matthew Lounsbury back and have him explain what's really going on. We'll see. We'll see if that can happen. This is an interesting question. We'll close on this. Chris, because I do think this is an interesting dynamic. So apologies to anybody that we didn't get to. The first edition of the college football playoff rankings are just around the corner. And you're going to start to see, where it's about who you've beat, who you've played, the status of your team right now as in reference to Brock Bowers being out. Maybe for the rest of the year for Georgia. I think it's being billed as like a 4 to 6, potentially 8-week thing. So there's a chance he could come back. There's a chance he might not because he had surgery. But anyway, does Michigan have a shot to be considered the number one team when the college football playoff rankings come out? I think it's after week 8, right? So
it's
after
tough
this
week, I think it comes out when they're on the bye.
Is that right? Or is it this week coming up? Because Michigan's 7-0. This will be week 8. I thought it was after this week.
They play this weekend.
And then heading into their bye.
Heading into the bye.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, sure, they've got a chance. It's clear that, I think the big thing that's going to come back is the same thing that people keep harping on, which is, strength of schedule. Who has Michigan played? And at that point, you look at it, Nebraska, Indiana, Minnesota, Michigan State, Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers is a decent team this year, but, the non-conference schedule, I think in terms of the playoff conversation is going to keep them right where they're at number 2. I do think they are the number 2 team in the country, can make a strong argument for why they should be number 1. But even as somebody who, loves the Wolverines through and through, I got to see them in Happy Valley. Before I really think is this the number 1 team in the country? Because they sure as hell look like it, but I want to see what they look like against another ranked team. And we're not going to find that out until week 10. So I don't think Michigan moves to number 1, especially with Bowers out. I think they stay right where they're at. I think you see Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2, and then you'll have, a whole host of candidates where, you can fill out 3 and 4. And Vince saying Penn State isn't a threat. Penn State is a threat. I'm not sure. I'd like you to elaborate on that a little bit. They're definitely a threat to Michigan.
Yeah. I have no problem with keeping Georgia at 1. I just don't. I mean, they haven't lost. They're back-to-back defending champs. They're still playing really well. They did blow out a couple of teams that I think are decent, at least respectable. But they've also had some struggles against some other teams that are not so good that Michigan hasn't really had that. So like Georgia has beaten a better team than Michigan has, but they've also struggled with teams that Michigan hasn't struggled with. So like there's a little bit of a give and take there with Michigan and Georgia, but they started number one. They haven't lost yet. They have lots of history and a recency bias. Like I'm fine with it. Michigan will be where they're supposed to be if they win the games they're supposed to win, and same with Georgia. I mean, they're going to have a chance to defend their title again. And Michigan's certainly going to get an opportunity here in a little less than a month when they go to Happy Valley, because that's really just comes down to that 3-game stretch at the end of the year. I would expect Maryland to still have a decent schedule, and then obviously Ohio State's Ohio State. So that's really what Michigan might be number 2 all the way through all of that until they get a chance to beat Penn State and Ohio State. So
if Michigan gets that win in Happy Valley against Penn State, I feel so much better about that Maryland game, because I think they are going to be highly, highly motivated to get win number 1,000. And I just don't see any shot that, the Terps knock them off there in College Park.
Yeah, no, I mean, if they can handle Penn State, that's such a sandwich game, though, dude. Like that's a dangerous formula. I don't think Maryland's good enough to get it done, but man, between Penn State and Ohio State right there, and Maryland is pretty good this year. That is a little bit hairy. And you do have the 1,000th win thing. That's an interesting week. That's an interesting week for sure, that Maryland game on the road. So there you have it. Hour and 16. Thank you to Matt Lounsbury. I'll thank him again because he went through the ringer a little bit.
Poor bastard.
People are brutal. You people.
Well, you know what? No, don't come at the people. I love the people here. You gotta stake your claim, mark your turf, and make sure all the outsiders know when they step in. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be smooth riding for you over here.
I'm not going to repeat what some people said. I'd be laughing if I said I didn't laugh at those comments.
Drier than a popcorn fart, I think I heard.
I think that was
Come on.
That's
what happens, man. You're stepping in the gauntlet here.
Yeah.
Got to bring it.
All right, there you have it. Well, we'll be back on Friday. We will remember our predictions this week. These ones are going to be fun. Man, dude, I think it's going to be ugly.
Ugly.
So there you go. All right, we'll see you guys on Friday.